Hello everyone. We are going to show you how not to complicate stuff in Houdini with one practical example. And here with me is Igor Žanić, and he's FXTD, let's say, and he's lecturer at Rebelway School of Visual Effects. And he was on the project that we are going to present you. He was my mentor, so he was providing me with setups and like ideas how not to complicate stuff. And I am Bogdan, and I am supervisor at Krater Studio, more TD, and I'm working in Houdini for past, let's say, 4 or 5 years, and before that I was a compositing artist here in Crater, so I have whole scope of experience. Okay, so
hi everyone, so my name is Igor. So like Bogdan said, I am more or less a water FX guy for the last 15 years. So my journey was kind of started pretty simple as a real flow guy. After that, the old and forgotten Naiad solver came out, and back then only Veta and few bigger studios have, sourcing that they could try. And I was kind of the guy who sent, I don't know, maybe 1 million emails to the guy who developed Naiad, if I can try, and they finally kind of give me. And back then there was almost nothing in Naiad in terms of examples, and it was just simple scene, but I was kind of learning Houdini, so everything was kind of really similar. And after that was kind of start my journey with water effects, and now after almost 15 years I'm just doing water effects, doing consulting for bigger studios, smaller shop, also helping other artists to learn and start. And because the flip itself, people always think, yeah, it's something that it's hard to do, slow to simulate, but with few guidance you can actually make really good, cool stuff, especially now at home. We all have now powerful machines that you can do simulation that was 20 years ago only doable in ILM, Veta, and Scanline and other bigger studios. So now you have freedom to do. It's only your imagination and bit of waiting for simulation that can take 20, 40, 50 hours. Sometimes it can be painful, but yeah, it's still the slowest, how to say, part in VFX, because iteration time can take sometime 1 week, sometime even more, depending how fast is your sim nodes or how big is your render farm. So always, my goal is to teach others how they can do stuff pretty simple at the beginning to show to the clients and then build on top. So I'm always kind of saying that for me, the flip, it's kind of like a modeling. Start simple and then gradually add more complex and complex stuff, and always show to the clients how the result can look, explaining their idea, so that minimize iteration at the end. It's not like you need to do 5,000 version, so trying to lower it and at the end become faster and faster. So this was one of the, I think the second project in Serbia that was heavy with water effects. The first one was the Shark Night. That was kind of painful because we did like few shots and we spent on one shot slow motion 120 frames 7 months because client was kind of picky, move left, move right, move left, move right. I don't know how many versions at the end, but we finally made it. So this is like the second biggest project in terms of water effects, and Bogdan did a really amazing job, and we will try to present what he did and how he solved the stuff in these shots.
Okay, I was not alone, so couple of guys that worked on this project are among you here. And yeah, so this is one Indian Bollywood film that we got that project when just before Corona started. So this project got us through whole lockdown. So half of the project we were working from home, and we faced all the challenges that go along with that. And you can see this like typical Bollywood type of shots. Yeah. So in the end, we did around more than 60 shots on this project, and okay, and yeah. So just before that project, I was attending water effects course at Rebel Way with Igor. So he was my teacher. And when I started course, I was like, okay, for the final assignment, I will do giant robot that is holding a huge battleship breaking in half. If everyone watched Evangelion, that was my dream. Yeah. So Igor told me, okay, can you do whale jump first, and then we'll speak about robots. I didn't do whale jump because we got this project, and these were some initial tests for the project. And yeah, we'll loop video once again, and we'll tell you, maybe show you some of the pitfalls that you will fall in as junior flip artist, and hopefully you will not repeat same mistakes. Okay, so if we go to the beginning of this video, so because we had this ridiculously big wave in the animatic, my idea was to do it all in flip. So to generate 50 or 100 meters of wave doing one simulation. Igor told me it's not possible, do not try. I was trying, and these were some tests with that. So even Scanline, if you watched, I think it's San Andreas, even they didn't do it that way. So nobody should even try to do that. So second approach that Igor suggested is that we take ocean and apply some kind of deformer on it, and basically that would be the base for the effect. And here you can see that we did then simulation only around the ship, so that is way cheaper than to do the whole wave. So these are these tests, and this is I was trying to increase thickness of the water that's being simulated on the front of the ship. And yeah, it should be covered with something. And this is the final test where we just tested the idea, okay, can we just emit some water on top of that deformed wave? And that is, when you have to do something like this is the way to do it. So you will get some water breaking at the top, but the way the wave behaves, like huge mass of the water, it's very controllable. Basically, with few sliders, you can control overall shape of the wave, and just add some flip simulations on top of that. Okay.
So basically the thing was that if they took approach of doing like flip sim, the first thing would be iteration would be like few days to show something to the client, and the biggest problem is that clients sometimes can be picky. You know, we want faster waves, slower waves, bigger waves, other different types of waves, and sometimes to simulate all that, first it's really slow. Sometimes it's really hard to get all the details, but also the other problem is when you're doing like showing something to the client like previous, you're always going to start, you know, with the ocean, and then adding deformer is going to give you something similar how that wave is going to look. And especially this kind of giant, huge Among Us waves, they are really slow in nature. So they are moving really, really slow. So fluids sometimes tend, even when everything is so slow, to not react so proper. Especially, you know, this fluid is going, like in this test, is going to slide. So you will have a lot of problems. And like I said, all these iteration will take a lot of time. And sometimes you don't have it, that kind of luxury. So with deforming the wave, you can actually do the timing and showing the clients, okay, this is the wave, this is the look of the wave, how fast, and they can play. Also, one good thing with providing, for example, asset or HDR to the layout gauss, they can actually play with the speed with speed of the wave, height of the wave, and they can present to the client, okay, this is what we have. We just need to add effects on top. So this was one of the, still like this is technique that is used for ages, and still it's the fastest way to get something like this, these humongous slow waves, and because you have complete control, and then you are just adding effects on top. So even if you change the wave, you can, let's say, not so easily, but if you have prepared all the sourcing and other secondary elements like spray, mist, foam, it's a lot easier to update than waiting for simulation, because sometimes it can crash and you need to show client something in the morning. So there is a lot of problem, and it's hard. Sometimes it's really hard to control. So this was one really simple way. And also the good thing about doing this kind of approach can be because it can be consistent through all the shots. If one shot you're using displacement, other shots, for example, the thing is that sometimes can happen with displacement, all your waves look like normal, calmy, choppier waves, but sometimes when you add fluid sim, everything can become really splashy. So consistency between the shots can be really different. One shot you have Caspi waves with a spray, and then the next shot it's humongous splashes everywhere, so it's hard to control. But in this wave, it's kind of through like, I don't know how many shots, like 60, 80 shots, they have consistency. And it's kind of, also the good thing is that they can render the ocean only with the boat through every shots and present into edit and show to the clients, okay, this is the lighting with the ocean, we just need to add other layers on top, like foam, spray, and so on. So this is kind of, for them also fastest approach, because simulating that huge wave will first take a lot of storage space that sometimes you don't have the luxury, and also the simulation time can be too crazy. So this was for them. And also it's good because in this type of shots, because it's night, storm, you can hide a lot of things, especially in this shot, if you're just focusing on the foreground, background, it's almost like, cloudy mist and fog, and you don't see anything. So more or less you're focusing only on that section. So this was kind of the fastest ways for them to do.
Okay. This shot that you see was a test for the project, and client saw it, and we got the project, and then we were facing challenges that Igor told. For example, back then we had 15 or 16 terabytes of storage for effects in our studio. So we did some calculations and figured out that we need around 100 terabytes. So immediately we upgraded to new storage server for that. And this test was rendered in Arnold. And because we are traditionally very like Arnold-based studio, I was facing a little bit of pressure on the side of my supervisors not to change renderer, and I spent maybe a couple of weeks trying to develop a system in which we would take this ocean data, bake it to displacement maps, and then render it in Arnold. And I managed to convince them to not use Arnold for that. And tomorrow, if you come to my presentation, I will be showing how we converted this ship asset from Arnold to Mantra, so we could render it. We could render water in Mantra, but early on we decided not to render water with Arnold, but to switch to Mantra and to render ship with Arnold. So it might seem more complex, but it saved us a lot of storage space and time. Okay, so after that test, this was one of the first shots in the sequence, and Igor was supervising me, like giving me advice how to solve it. And this lame thing is the first version of this, and I want this. So the problem with guided oceans in Houdini is that you simulate one tiny strip of water, and as you increase resolution of your simulation, that strip becomes thinner and thinner. So at some point it might become less than half a meter. So in order to get this nice splashing, you would need to create your own tool, and I created this kind of lines in order to drive water away from the ship. And Igor suggested that I do some water emission as well in the front of the ship, so I did that as well. And these are the results. And for the ship engine, I created a similar kind of tool, and these were some of the first results coming from that tool. Yeah, so basically that tool was used in all these two tools were used in all shots on this project, and they proved to be working quite nicely. And these are some of the wedges for this simulation. So I'm not afraid to tell you that this shot had like more than 50 versions. Yeah, so don't be afraid to wedge. That is the best thing to learn simulations. So I know Igor for 15 years, and I know that when he goes to vacation, he always puts some wedges on his machine. So that's the best way to learn flip. Okay, you want to add something?
Yeah, I pushed one. So the thing that I was saying at the beginning, so this is more or less like he started first with a, let's say, simple container, and he almost got nothing. So because the first problem with the ship is too slow, and to get like realistic look, he need to crank up this resolution crazy, and that will just not work. So, and especially the problem is when you are simulating, like, guide sim, you only have that small narrow band, there is nothing below. So you cannot not add any forces below the ship, like, like engine or something like that will impact the simulation on top. So like I said, something like adding extra tools, in this case, like you are modeling the shape of that splash, how you want to be. So you have like control, even in simulation when ship is going really slow, you have control how you can make these splashes to be like more crazy, to actually fake that ship is going too fast, or that there is like a wave that actually hit. Because the biggest problem is, especially with the ship is going up and down, is that because there is no depth, like you are dropping something in the water, there is a depth and you can get like nice impact splash. Because there is no depth in the guide layer where the ship impact, there is actually nothing to pull out of the water. So with the tool that he created in front, he can actually animate that splash to go higher, stronger, more wide, more narrow, however you want. And also for the engine at the back of the ship, because like I said, usually you will kind of create some volumes below the tank and just make it like real, push the let's say pyro sim. But in this case, because he's just simulating the small narrow band at the top, the idea that he creates that kind of force, that push, like creating that engine and the boiling thing. And also the thing that he said about wedging is something that I like to do often, especially if you are at home and you want to learn flip, is that many times you go through manuals and they are saying some stuff that you don't understand, because they will say, yeah, this will do that and this will do. So the easiest way, put your object, take one parameter, do 4 compare test, different resolution. You see how that impact your sim. You then, for example, test other attribute. And with this one, trying, different assets, going from small one to the bigger one, you can really understand how solver work. And doing, I'm kind of guy that for every project I try to do as many wedges as I can, because this is kind of still learning process for everyone. Even after 15 years, I'm still learning and want to, make stuff better. So you always think, how you can make your shot look better. So when you understand, especially, the thing is when you run the ship, especially you need to think in what kind of, let's say, environment your ship is. If it's calm, your wave need to travel, further away from the ship. In the ocean, kind of stormy ocean, your waves are more or less, narrow around the ship and also the foam. But sometimes you can have problem that your waves like here going really close to the container, I mean, the easiest way will just expand the container and wait another 20 hours. But what you can do also, you can model the shapes close to the ship that are kind of broken and tell the fluid soon as when you kind of leave, for example, here, leaving the trail, if you go to that shape, try to slow it down. This is kind of, you mimic the force in the nature. Because, for example, if you're simulating something on a flat tank, and you drop something and you want to be the ocean, the biggest problem is going to be you will get like waves that kind of travel endlessly. It's more or less like I'm trying to compare with you dropping something in a swimming pool. You will have the rings of the waves going back and forward, and on the top of the ocean, you kind of don't have that because the ocean waves are kind of the main force that stop your fluid. So with this kind of mask, you can actually guide and tell, okay, I want fluid to slow down here. So even you don't need to simulate like huge containers, you can really narrow it down. But with these kind of wedges, compare, test over and over, you can find the balance. So instead of, your starting point container can be, 200 by 200. At the end, you can really minimize to be 200 by 50 because that's what you need for your shot. At the beginning, your simulation took like 20 hours. At the end, it can just took 5 hours. So with these kind of wedges, you can compare, minimize and optimize your shot as much as possible, especially on these kind of movies and effects where, like Bogdan said, storage is kind of limit. So you need to find a way to crank up everything but still work for your shot.
Okay. So this next one, we had like 3 shots with this collapsing. So this flickering geometry you see, this is the collider that was colliding with water. It's perfectly fine. So you don't need anything better for water collisions. And the challenge in this type of shot was that it's too huge. And basically, what we did 4 separate slices for these waves. So basically, this is like the first test where we developed what would be the height of the wave hitting the shore. So this is not collapsing because of the wave, but because of the earthquake. And basically, next task was how to split that on several machines and how to join everything together. So here you can see basically the seams between these different simulations. And in Houdini, what you can do, you can take 4 machines that are in network and do distributed simulation. And basically, these 4 machines would communicate and share data, and they would act as one simulation. In this case, because it's dark, it's night, that is not in the first, in the front plan of the shot. We just did 4 separate simulations, and then later on, when we did the final mesh for this, we blended them together. So when it was rendered, you cannot see where is the seam. So if you look here, it's really hard to tell where were these seams. So Igor later will show you some techniques how he blends these kind of simulations. And here in this shot, I don't have that play blast, unfortunately, but we did a couple of these breaking wave simulations, and these breaking wave simulations are totally separate. They don't belong to this main mass of water. So you can think of that like, I want to kitbash some of the water splashes. So you do these water splashes separately. I think these water splashes are from the other shot, from some previous shot. You take that cache, put it in, it works. Nobody sees that a bunch of water is penetrating through these rocks. So that in the end, that worked. Okay.
Also, one thing about, for example, this shot that sometimes people will take, what you get from, animator layout, for example, in this case, following the lighthouse, and just use that for collision. But sometimes playing with collision really simple, like, because sometimes if, let's say, your collision is really smooth, like the lighthouse is hitting the water surface, and because, you know, there is nothing like crazy. I mean, in this case, it's kind of destruction, but something can be just, you know, flat tube more or less hitting the surface. Sometimes you can get really not so interesting splashes. So really simple adding noise on this geometry, noise with animation that's kind of flicker, you can get really interesting splashes. And you are not going to see, like, because there's going to be tons of white water on top, you're not going to see if this is like perfectly sliding with your collision object. But instead of getting this kind of smooth collision with the surface, adding noise that kind of just flicker when he hit the surface actually can make random splashes that look more interesting and more in a sense that sometimes even with a mid-rest sim you can get better looking result than actually just simulating, you know, this kind of lighthouse tube fall into the water. So with the, again, with the simple ideas, you know, adding noise, or maybe even taking the, like Nikola said, taking the VDB approach, maybe eat the geometry and just falling into the water can actually break it even more. And sometimes this can help in terms of look. And like Bogdan said, this is the nice shots. Half of the stuff you're not going to see, but at the end, all this is going to be covered with tons of layer of mist, spray, and splashes. So with a simple approach, you know, adding noise on geometry, maybe eat geometry randomly, you can make, even with a mid-res sim, you can get really more interesting look than just, you know, I get the object from animation, just fall it down and that's it. So instead of, let's say, instead of lighthouse, it's hitting surface like this. So the splash will be like uniform. You actually break it with the noise to be like this. So the splashes will go in any different way. So even with a, let's say, flat tank sim, because sometimes you're simulating the flat tank and you're adding the ocean on top, you're actually like faking that object hit the ocean surface because there is a cusp of the waves. So it's kind of more broken instead of just letting it fall down and okay, that's it. So with the simple approaches, adding noise on the geometry, maybe with VDB eating that bit, you can make more interesting look, because at the end you're going to add ocean on top and you need to seamlessly kind of blend. So.
Okay. So the next one is similar to the test one. So we have a big wave, and the approach is pretty much we are just emitting some of the particles here on top, and these were some first tests of the water, similar as with the first shot. So it took a couple of iterations to get splashing we wanted, and we don't simulate anything on this big wave other than a little bit of spray on top. And these were some tests for the whitewater simulations. And Igor showed us how to create whitewater on the, how to not simulate flip in order to do whitewater. If you don't know what it means, it's okay. But basically, these were some wedges for the whitewater. So yeah, this shot basically we already got into workflow, and this shot went out without any problems. Okay. Versions. So yeah, for this type of shots, this first one, because the first one with the boat on the calmer sea, it took many versions because it was first one, but on some of the shots we did like 20-30 versions. On some we did just a couple because we already have set up from another shot, and then we just do a couple of versions and go with that.
So for the wedges, it's actually Flipbook, Play Blast, and yeah, there is nothing else. So it's more or less the same thing. You know, you're doing the viewport preview with different settings and just comparing like 4 versions to find the result that you like. For this shot, the things about the foam that Bogdan was saying, sometimes simulating the foam can be really tricky because sometimes you have too much, less, and sometimes client is really picky. I don't want here foam because the camera is low, and sometimes the really easy approach at the first can be you can give your conceptual artist, okay, code with the client, and he can tell you where he wants foam, like taking the real pictures. Okay, I want foam here, foam there, foam here. So what you can do initially, instead of actually simulating, because these kind of water shots sometimes are really short. So to simulate white water for this kind of shot that can take, I don't know, 50 frames, you need to simulate sometimes 500 frames before to actually get the shot in this stage so that white water is already developed. So like I said, iteration time is really slow. Sometimes what you can do is taking the real foam textures that you can find on internet, place them where you want, and first approach can be just put displacement of the ocean on top and render with the ocean. Sometimes it can work without any problem because the client, what they see, it's real texture. So they cannot be so, it's not look so real. Sometimes if you want to go like a bit further, you can take this foam as initial state for your whitewater scene. So instead of simulating 500 frames of pre-roll, you can actually go with 50 frames, just taking this texture place where you want and run the scene. And sometimes it can save you a lot of time, especially with these kind of shots, because sometimes they don't like to be like real. They want more creative look, so they want foam in this area. So like, but you can say it's not your realistic, but at the end they are one who is paying us, so we need to listen to them.
Yeah, so what Igor just told you, I have a practical example. So this is the foam that is being emitted in like regular way, and you see that it doesn't look that good. And this version this is the foam. Basically, we took from internet 2 images of foam on the stormy ocean, and stamped them across this surface and used that to emit white water. And we use these 2 textures for the whole project, and we use them even today for other projects. So two JPEG files. Okay, so that always creates more natural looking results. And there is here something to say about imperfections. Okay, so let's see. So here, this layer, you can kind of see some blotchiness here, maybe. Let's see. Okay, it's very short. Yeah, so here you can see some artifacting, blotchiness, resolution problems. But when you have a good comper on your side, it can get covered. So yeah, it's always, you don't need to push stuff to be perfect if you know what the scene will be. If the scene will be dark and it will have a lot of stuff on top of it, it's okay. And here there is one more like beginner's mistake in this shot. So what I try to do, I try to simulate water on the ship and water around the ship in one go. And this took, let's say, around 5 or 6 hours to simulate. Maybe if we crank up resolution, it would take even more. So if I'm not happy with it, and I'm not happy with this rushing water, of course, I need to resimulate that again. So the cycle is 1 day. So I change some parameters, put it to simulate, and then tomorrow morning I see next version and what I messed in next version. So so in this one, what I did is I had one simulation for the ocean, for the ocean surface, and one simulation for the water draining. And because these 2 simulations are separate, this water that is draining, I could crank up resolution on it because it's much simpler. It doesn't have this ocean thing. It's just water coming down falling down. And basically, when I separated these things, I got faster simulations, and I could tweak this this stuff independently. So if I'm happy with the water around the ship, I could maybe tweak water that's draining and not do everything from start. So that was one lesson that I learned on this shot. Okay, and there is one tip for the rain, for example, on this project, because we had rain in every shot. What we did rain simulation once. So there was one artist who did simulation for the rain that is like 2000 frames, and we used that rain cache for all the shots. And in some of the shots we added like small rain hits on the boat, but it was an entirely different system. Okay.
One thing that I want to add is that, sometimes polishing this kind of shots can take ages, and it's kind of like Bogdan said, iteration. It's slow. So one thing that I like to do is that I try, when I do, let's say, one version that I'm okay, I want to see to what level I can actually bring that shot without doing any more sims. So, taking, even if it's mid-res, something that maybe you don't like, but you don't know how that's going to be as a final result. So sometimes you can focusing on the tweaking the flip sim over and over and over and over, and it doesn't give you, look that you want. But if you go with the, with the route that, okay, you get the flip sim that you are okay, let's add the white water on top. Okay, white water looks okay, maybe I can do it a bit better, but let's take this shot to the stage of rendering and comp. And let's see what the comp guys can do. Maybe the comp guys can actually make shot a lot better, so I understand, okay, if I go back, I see on what things I need to be careful, and to how to help compositing guy to do even better, because at the end, compositing, let's say, is the cheapest thing to fix. Like, they can fix it a lot faster. Lighting is the next stage where you want to fix stuff. Okay, the light guy can make the shot, rendering can take, a bit of time. The last thing that you want to go back to the flip and do all over again, because like we said many times, iteration, it's a lot slower. So when you are happy with one stage of the shot, my advice is go through the render, pre-comp, even yourself. You don't need to go with the comp guys. Pre-comp and see how much you can actually put, pull out from the, from the your render layers, that because you always separate your water or any render into a lot of AOVs that you can control in a comp. And there is also a lot of other AOVs that sometimes, for example, in this case, where everything is white, you can actually, render that as a separate AOV. And on your water render, you can add, a bit of greenish underwater to fake like underwater subsurface, bubbles. So with a simple trick, you can actually make your shot look better, even without rendering billions of points or volume underneath the surface. So my advice, soon as you are okay with one stage of the shot, take it to the, comp level and see where you are. Then go back, and fix other things, because sometimes, comp guys can fix your shot a lot, and sometimes can be totally opposite. So.
Okay, so this is this shot exactly is the case which Igor spoke about. So just a few seconds more. Okay, so you can see all of the failed versions of this, and this is actual mesh that was rendered for this shot, and you can see it's pretty blotchy. It's not perfect. And what we did in comp, all of the upper part of this mesh we faded out, because this effect is not about clear water, it's about white water that's dispersing around. So this other pass, this pass was the main guy. So what we had here is we had really hard time rendering this, because it was volume with really great resolution. So what we had to do, we had first to delete all the particles that are outside the camera. And you can see this, for example, in many other lectures. it's really good way to think about things. So if you delete stuff that is, let's say, 20% out of the border of the camera, you can save a lot of memory. So this one was between 64 and 128 gigs of RAM to render. And I remember that this was rendering for 1 week, this shot. And the other thing, in order to get nice like cloudy look for this type of effects, you will have to increase ray depth on your volumes. So basically, you will have to say to renderer, okay, when ray hits this volume, it would bounce 2 times and then it might come out. And this costs a lot. It means a lot, but it costs a lot. So for these frames, I think it was close to 20 hours of a frame just to render these volume effects. And I heard from some friends from some bigger studios, it's not unusual. Yeah. So yeah, and this shot was crazy because client really wanted this really physically impossible steep wave. So this was actually some previous version, but they say, I want it to be 60 degrees, even though in nature that's not possible. So you will face a lot of this kind of things in your work. So the first version was, of course, bad, and then we got to some better versions. And as you can see here, there is a lot of versions for whitewater where I tested different ideas. So this is just whitewater, regular whitewater, but at some point I was testing if I can emit some of the particles as streaks and use that to emit this foam. And yeah, you can see a bunch of versions for that. I don't know in the final version what went in, but it was mix of many different things. Okay. Yeah. So this one was really most difficult in terms of memory and rendering. Okay. And then for the end, yeah, we did these shots at the end of the project, and they were like, okay, one version approved. Yeah, there was a lot of these kind of shots where we already learned a lot of lessons, and then we can just implement that. And yeah, for the fires, a friend of ours did the fires, and he was the great thing for that was he was like, okay, if I can do it in one click with these off-the-shelf tools, I will do it. And he saved us a lot of trouble because he did a lot of these fiery shots. Okay, so that would be it. So any questions?
You never delete.
Right now we are
Till the end of the project.
Right now we are deleting some 20 terabytes of data. I think it's still ongoing. Yeah. So it takes.
When you finish the project, then you can delete the stuff. But till everything is online, most of the time you delete only the old caches, like to save the storage. And this is something that Bogdan said. Through every way, try to optimize your stuff as much as possible. So let's say if we think in terms of rendering, the shot before where everything was kind of into the camera, for that kind of shot, the single sequence can take, I don't know, 10 terabytes without any problem if you don't optimize. So that means this kind of 10 terabytes, when you render on the render farm, if you have 50 nodes, they all is going to start sending these files to the render noise, and that can be slowed down your network. You cannot even load, even if you want to load something from the storage, like simple small QuickTime, is going to be slow. So deleting everything outside of the camera, minimizing the assets for the rendering, you can actually save that. Instead of let's say 10 terabytes for the render, you can actually put it down to let's say maybe 2, 3, 4 terabytes. So first you're going to save the storage. The rendering farm is going to be easier because there is not so much data to pull actually from the storage. So in these kind of shots, you know, the IT department is going to back to you, okay, delete the caches, optimize, because we don't have more space. It's, you know, hard. And sometimes, you know, you think the expanding the storage, it's easy, but that can be another story, you know, because if you just buy, you know, one for you storage, you know, server, sometimes it's really hard to expand that depending what kind of using. So you need to buy another storage, so you cannot merge them because there are tools, you know, the other, you know, storage vendors that can actually expand your storage just adding the nodes, but that's kind of cost a lot of money. There are some free open source tools, but sometimes you need to change, you know, if you are working on Windows, it's another letter, so you need to fix your pipeline to reading the data from another storage. So sometimes expanding first can be cost too much, you know, for the smaller studios, because, you know, 1 terabyte storage, it's not usable 100 terabyte storage. It's actually maybe you need to buy 150 terabyte storage that you can actually use 100 terabytes. So that can be really cost, you know, for the studio, even for the, you know, smaller studios. So everything that at the beginning you can save the data will help you, you know, finish your shots. You know, sometimes the budget will not allow you to buy new storage, new hardware. It is what you have, you know, so you need to find a way, like Bogdan said, to render your shots. If you need to slice them, find a way, but any optimization that you can use will help you down the line.
Okay.
So for example, in Houdini, you can set up, let's say, dependency. So for example, you have some shot that, you know, set up that you're okay, and you set up, for example, flip sim, mesh sim, whitewater sim, mantra render in Houdini, like for example, using compositing tool, pre-com that shot, put the information, deliver to the MPEG, you know, format, delete the caches that you want, and you can do that for every shot. You just put the animation of the ship run overnight. In the morning, you have only the renders. Caches are deleted if you don't want them. So you can make it, you know, or just, you know, for example, run the sims, you know, because you're limited with amount, maybe just leave the render assets, you know, delete the caches because you don't need them anymore. Just leave the render assets because you maybe want to render again. So maybe you just want to save some of the data, but you can create like entire node tree that can save your storage. And also one good tip for when you are doing the wedges, like compare test. One thing that I teach at Rebel Way, because sometimes you can do a lot of iteration over and over. Sometimes you can run on your farm, like let's say you go on a weekend and you have like 3 days of, you know, your machine are not doing anything. You can run 100 sims over a weekend instead of, I mean, one thing with this kind of, you know, previous wedges, you are only care about result. You want to see the preview. You don't care about caches. You want to see that you can compare. You can actually, for example, take 4 sims and store them at the same place over and over. So instead of one sim, let's say one sim can make 100 gigabyte of data. So 50 sim will create huge amount of data. But if you overwrite, for example, you do the sim, do the preview, do another sim that will overwritten. And the next day, you only taking like 100 gigabytes, nothing else. And you did like 200 sims over weekend. No one is complaining about the storage because you just took the amount of the last sim. And if you want, you can take that last sim, delete everything. So in the morning, you have previews that you can just look and compare. So for example, I mean, there is in Houdini, you can do in many different ways. There is like wedge tool. Now you have tops. One thing that I like, because I like to do the old style, like I like to have version scene file per my wedge. So when I come back, because sometimes you run with the tops and maybe you forgot to add some information that you don't know what parameter was, but if you have the scene file, I don't care. I could just open that scene and see what I did. And for me, it's kind of, when you are happy, you can just delete them. But for the sake of backup, you know, just to be safe, I like to do like change parameter, run the new version, run on the farm, run on the farm. I mean, sometimes developing the tops and entire workflow can take you more time than actually save 50 scene and just submit on the farm.
Okay, so guys that are working with me know very well that I really insist. So if somebody sends me a file that's called test5, I don't want to watch it. It can be the best thing in the world. I don't want even to bother to look at it, because it's I don't know where it came from. You can be sick tomorrow, and I don't know from which version of the scene that QuickTime MP4 file went from. So it's really, you don't have to be a rocket scientist in order to figure that out. People at Island, Veta, and other studios did that long time ago. So safest thing is you have one version of the scene. You whatever you deliver from that scene, all the files like video previews, call it the same as the scene. You can put description after, but if it is called as the scene, everybody knows where it came from, and that goes also for rendering. Don't call your renderings final 7, final maybe, this time it's final.
I like it.
Yeah.
Client don't.
Yeah.
Please approve.
Yeah, so this is the safest way to do it. You have a bunch of scenes. It costs less than the other way around. Okay.
Yeah, I just want to ask, does this Houdini only vector-based, so the vectors generate waves, or is there some null object, for example, that impacts the size of wave?
It's all in your imagination. Sometimes half of the shots are not going to be real at all, but this is how client wants.
Sorry,
You know, for example, this wave in reality maybe it will be faster, maybe it will be bigger, but that's why, you know, this kind of tools that Houdini have, and also trying to go simpler way that will give you freedom later on, is what Houdini is. What Houdini it's really good. So sometimes most of these shots, it's not going to be real at all. You know, if we think about these splashes, you know, in nature they will look a lot different, you know, but sometimes what clients want is just to look massive, you know, to look amazing. They don't look, they don't care if it's real, if it's per particle base, if you see everything. No, it need to look amazing. That's what the sell. I mean, if you go to the real, first thing, you will not be able to simulate to look real, because that would be impossible to simulate billions of points. So the final goal is to look amazing. So however you find the way to look amazing, that's, yeah.
You mentioned that on that lighthouse that is going, that you had the noise with the beer collision. How do you avoid explosion of the slips, because it's changed the topology?
I mean, in terms of you're adding noise. So, for example, you have falling geo, and they have their own velocity. So you add the noise and calculate that again. And because, for example, in this case, let's say the tube, it's not changing per, you know, it's not changing poly count per frame. So adding noise will not change anything. It will be like creature is falling. So, but sometimes even if you have the errors, like you said, explosion, sometimes they can be good. Sometimes you can take the errors that actually in this case will look more interesting, because you will get the blast or something. So sometimes if you, I like to say, if you think that some idea will not work, try it. Maybe it will. Maybe it will not work for this shot, but sometimes people think, yeah, it's a dumb idea, I don't want to try it. Many times I try 50 dumb idea, I only use one, but maybe these stupid ideas, I will use it for the other because I saw what they can use. So for example, jittering geometry hitting the surface, especially because there are the waves on top, will make the random splashes explosion. That's what I want. I don't want nice, smooth, splash.
Can I add? I think for the collisions, for the flip, you don't have to have a like stable, non-changing topology. So as long as you have correct vectors on your meshes, it should work. So we at some shots we used like VDB blobs for collisions and actually not caring about topology. I think that's more problem in Houdini with other solvers, maybe with Vellum. Yeah.
And sometimes your collision geometry can be really complex, too much. So ingesting that into the flip will be slow as hell. So your flip sim will be slow, really slow. So creating the proxy model from your, let's say from the lighthouse, for example, create VDB, convert to mesh, and in that mesh we have changing polygons. Then you transfer velocity from original source to have stable vectors and use that for collision. Your flip sim would be a lot faster, and sometimes there could be the problems in geometry like open edges and stuff like that. So that can also make problem in the flip. But if you create good proxy model, transfer velocity, your simulation will be faster because it's less polygons, and it's going to be more stable. It's not going to be, you know, open edges and stuff like that. So always think to, even before the doing any flip sim, try to optimize everything that you can. So if don't use live geo if you don't need. So if you have like, let's say procedurally building entire, you know, island or something, save it before go to the flip. You know, optimize it, use high-res for the render, but for the flip itself, add VDB, convert to polygons, you know, use as, let's say, as simple mesh as possible to look like your original one. So even before going to flip, optimization is really important. So if you don't optimize that part, your sim will be slow. So entire process iteration will be slower and slower and slower.
Do we have time or?
Boss? Yeah. Few more questions.
Or we can continue. Okay. Okay. Yeah.
Yeah, so how much did knowing ahead of time that this is going to be a night shot impact your workflow? Like, you have to change your approach if it was a daylight sunny shot.
Yeah. So this helped us a lot because many errors, as I showed you, are not so visible during the night. So even this flashing of the thunder, even that helped because that kind of masks, you know, when you have this flash and then after this flash, it gets even darker. So these things.
You use all the same techniques but pay more attention, or just have to?
For the day, we might need to have like more resolution on the ocean itself, on the like ocean surface.
For example, let's say in these night shots, you will only focus foam in front of the ship. In day shots, you will see foam behind the ship, like everywhere. So your shot will become, let's say, more complex. And in this case, because behind the ship is dark, you don't see anything. So you are focusing only on the front part. So more, let's say, day shots will add more stuff to do. You know, but in terms of complexity, they can be same. Just you need to cover. And for example, this wave, if it's day shot, you know, tsunami waves, you will see it till, you know, infinity. But in this can be cut few meters after the ship because, let's say, ship is kind of hidden that way, so you don't see the behind. But as soon as the ship is in lower angle, you can see the back. But because it's night, also fog, rain, mist, all on top, it's kind of hidden. So it's kind of, let's say, easier in some sense. But you know, sometimes day shots can be just more stuff to add.
Yeah, you can see it here. Yeah. So in this shot, you can see we did. This is the ocean, so it's not even going all the way to horizon, and this line is where we did until this line we did whitewater simulations, so not the whole ocean. And basically, you see when shot is composited, so there is kind of fog, black fog that is fading all of that. So that's how night really helps you.
Možda se vrati, ne znam, ok. So for example, one also, simple idea that you can use is, for example, you simulate this part with the foam and everything, splashes that you can see there is nothing here because, Bogdan is already know it's going to be night. Sometimes you can take this sim and, you have caches and everything and just take the same one and just put it randomly behind that wave and you can render without simulating the background. You just, because you're not going to see too much, but even with the same sim, maybe you can simulate this as assets, like let's say 300 frames, just time offset, put it in the back random, you can get more white water and more stuff in the background with just simulating the front part. Because the front part has enough details, so you don't need to simulate all over again. Just take this one, let's call it as a simple tree asset, just put the tree in the background. You take the wave with the splashes, maybe offset the time and put it, maybe rotate, so you can build the shot even with the same sim. And that can help you to make your shot even more dynamic and more rich in terms of more stuff in a background. For example, if there is a few light storms and they are picky, we want to see, there is a sky in the background, but we want to see this kind of details on top of this wave. So instead of simulating, take this sim and put it and see how that look. If you're not happy, then you go back and do another one. But taking the same sim sometimes will help you just to model your shot without doing sims all over again.
Okay, so Igor has presentation in which he will show you this is the old way.
Yeah, it's a simple way how to do flips up the up-res and how you can make your shot, let's say, more optimized way to add details only where you want, how you can blend and simulate white water.